Hello there, beautiful teachers, and welcome to another Vibrant Music Teacher Chat. This is your weekly show on YouTube where we talk about the latest goings-on and happenings in our industry. We answer any questions you might have, and we discuss a special topic each week. This week, we're talking about polyrhythms, so let me know in the comments how you deal with polyrhythms in your studio, whether you have a favorite way of teaching them, whether you have trouble with them yourself. This is a safe space, so share your experience with them. And let me know what favorite pieces you have that your students first encounter polyrhythms, or favorite teaching pieces that include some kind of polyrhythms, whether that's 2 against 3, 4 against 3, whatever. I would love to hear about your experiences in general. Before we get there, little bits of news. So first of all, this is almost kind of a PSA in case you haven't seen it. So to catch you up, in case you're not familiar, Tonara, which is a practice tool and assignment management system for teachers, they announced at the end of September, middle of September, that they're closing down. So they are going to be closing completely in November. So you need to, if you're using Tonara, you need to find a way to get your assignments out of there and set up a new system for your students. So the PSA is that Vivid Practice now has a Tonara importer tool. It's pretty cool. I sent out an email about it, but in case you missed that or you're not on our email list, it is here on the YouTube channel. So you can just check the channel, click through to Colourful Keys, and you can see my video there about how the tool works and how you can import your data. Even if you're not sure if Vivid is going to be the right tool for you, you could set up a free account and import it, and that gives you some more time to spend thinking in case you're worried about that November deadline with Tonara. So we set up that tool for you. It will magically pull everything across, including the attachments. It's seriously magical to watch. Like, I really enjoy it. It's fun. So it all comes trickling over, and then you can either use those inside Vivid Practice, or you can just use it to buy you time. Like, it's free to set up an account with us. It's not a trial period. You can have a free level of the account with one student. So it would give you more time if you're struggling with that. And you know, September was a stressful time of year for that news to come for a lot of us, myself included. So hopefully that'll help you out. On this, a similar note, related note, but not specific to Tonara, we have a free challenge that I'm running starting next week. So I want to give you the link if you want to sign up for that. It's starting next Wednesday, and you can sign up now. It's called the Assignment Sprint. Okay, so Assignment Sprint, and what it's going to be, we're going to work together to set up a bank or a catalog, a copy-paste system for your practice notes for students. So even if you don't use any kind of digital practice tool, this can be really useful, because even if you just want to copy-paste into a Word document, there are things that we write over and over and over. Let me know what some of yours are in the chat. Slow down might be one of them. There are things we write to students over and over and over, especially for pieces that we teach often, that we could save ourselves an enormous amount of time by just having a system set up in one go and then copy pasting from there. But I know how it is. This is the kind of thing that you think, yeah, I'm going to do that. And then another week rolls around and you're like, yeah, I'll set that up next week. And then you don't, and then you don't, and then you don't. And you're still just writing these things one by one. And you know it would save you time in the long run, but it is a bit of an investment of time initially to set it up. So that's what I'm going to help you do. This is going to be a 10-day challenge, because I want to leave a few days between some of the tasks you need to complete to make sure people have enough flexibility to complete it within their schedule. So it's going to be a 10-day challenge starting next Wednesday. So you can sign up at that link I've just dropped in the chat, or it'll be in the description later as well. And I hope you'll join me. I think it should be fun. I know it doesn't sound fun, but when we get to do these things as a community in this kind of sprint format, it does make for a lot more of a fun experience than if we're just sitting at home thinking, yeah, I have to get through this, right? So I hope you'll join me for that. Should be a lot of fun and should be really worthwhile. It can save you hours and hours and hours cumulatively over time by just having all these things set up for some of your favorite books or your favorite pieces that you teach a lot. So that is the assignment sprint, and it starts next week. Right, with that being said, let's talk a little bit about polyrhythms. So today's topic is polyrhythms and teaching polyrhythms to students of any level. So let me know your tips. How do you start off with polyrhythms? Juliet said I would start them off doing the rhythm on their bodies, so using body percussion, and then I would transfer this onto my congas. Love this. Then tap the rhythms on the piano lid. I think that's a great way to start. I think a lot of us start with some form of tapping, performing on body percussion or tapping on the lid or drums or something to take it away from the piano. And I do think that's a really, really important first step with something like this, especially because if you're simultaneously worrying about getting the right notes as well as doing this new kind of coordination, it can be really, really challenging. So I think that's a great place to start, is off the piano in some format. Now, a lot of people have their favorite phrases or something like that they use. So let me know what yours are. The reason we're talking about polyrhythms today is this guy. This is the latest concept collection. Members, if you haven't seen this yet, it's in the library in a digital studio license. That means you can print it as many times as you want for students in your studio. So yeah, it's in the library already for you. If you want a hard copy, that's available on the Colourful Keys store already as well. We've got beautiful pieces from 4 great composers in here. The first one actually includes one of the most common phrases. Let me know if this was one you were taught or one you use with your students. Nice cup of tea. Nice cup of tea or good cup of tea, hot cup of tea. I've heard many variations on this, but cup of tea seems to be the common phrase that I've heard the most often. So let me know if that was one of yours or one that you were taught with. I would just caution you a little bit on the phrases thing, and not to say don't use these. I think they're great, but they have to be used first with lots of practice with the teacher, because nice cup of tea is great, but you can say it in the wrong rhythm. And as with any rhythm phrase that we use, anywhere where we use words to teach a rhythm, or even like ta and ti and do da day, whatever, we have to practice it with our student. We have to do it enough times, repeat it together with them chanting with us to get it in their head the right way. Because otherwise they could say nice cup of tea. I mean, that's an odd way to say the phrase, but they could say it like that. So that's just my little caution on that. Yeah, Laura used this as a teenager. Yeah, it's a really common one. So that's actually in the title of Amy Stevens, the first piece by Amy Stevens. Nice cup of tea. Let me know if you did Come Sit With Me. I hadn't heard that one before, but obviously it fits in as well. Same kind of idea. I want to show you the third piece, in the book, which is by Chi Hua Tan. And she starts off with it actually as body percussion. And I love this as an example for 2 reasons. First of all, that it starts with this rhythm, or you could do it on the congas, like it literally mentions congas in the piece, so I think that would be great. Or you can do it on your knees or any surface you like. You could get pots and pans from your kitchen if you want to. But starting it off in that way. The other reason I love this piece as a starting point or a great reinforcer is that it's in 6/4. And sometimes the polyrhythm is difficult, not because it's made more difficult for students, just because it's shown in beamed notes. So students get more confused by it than is necessary, just because we're talking about fractions a lot of the time when we have beamed notes. And that can add this layer of difficulty, especially for a younger student that isn't difficult, but it isn't necessary to learning that. I've just seen in the chat mentioning difficult, right? Carrie and Kai both said not difficult, and that's actually included in this piece right there. Chihua uses that phrase right there, right? So I think that's a great place to start, and I love that it starts in 6/4 so that we can think about combining those notes in different ways. I want to play you just the start of Jungle Jam. If I can just find my little... Yeah, there. Took a second. Here, just listen to the start of this. That's the not difficult part you hear there. So I don't want to play the whole thing for you, but I do want to mention for members that this is the first one of these books that I've actually provided audio tracks that you can download. We always had them on the page, but you can now download them if you want to keep them for later, since these editions do expire. So yeah, I think that's a great place to start. Now, a lot of us start with the body percussion and with various ways like that, and I'd love your suggestions as well. I want to propose a different possibility for some students. This won't be for everyone, but you may have some students who are a bit like me. And this is how I understand things, and it may be like totally not for you, and that's fine, but I just want to put it out there as a suggestion that it's how I really understood polyrhythms and rhythms in general was from a much more mathematical, analytical standpoint. So I've just got this to show you, just to give you an example. So if we take the piece that's in 6/4, writing this out, and you could do this on a whiteboard in your studio or a piece of paper or whatever, I think can be a really useful step for a lot of students. Much like when we first teach metric counting, if anybody, writes out all the quavers / eighth notes and puts in the 1 and 2 and as a way to teach the structure, this is a similar way of doing it, and it's a way that makes things make sense to a lot of students who either love maths or find maths really difficult and can't think about this in the abstract until we see it laid out. So having all the quarter notes or crotchets laid out like this for your right hand and your left hand. And in Jungle Jam, the piece we were just listening to, there are minims or half notes in the right hand, and then dotted minims or dotted half notes in the left hand, right? So I'm just going to draw a rough tie. This is what I would do with students, right? Something like that. Okay, so we've written out, and I would have them do it alongside me. So I write it out on one whiteboard and they do it on another. Write out the 6 for the right hand, 6 for the left hand, and then put in these ties. Does anyone teach them this way or not? Like I say, it's not for every student, but it's very useful for many. So the right hand is doing minims or half notes, as I said. And then the left hand is doing dotted minims or dotted half notes. So if we write them out as tied notes, this is what it would look like. And this can be a lot clearer for many students to actually understand which is coming in between which. And to go back to looking at the music, you can kind of see that, right? You can see like which one comes in and which is next. But number one, that's not precise enough for many students, like me as a younger student. And number two, I don't want my students to rely on that, on like, this one looks like it comes in before that one and therefore I'll play it first. That's not really exact enough for rhythm, and it's often a little bit of a cheat code for younger or newer students. But when we're getting to this stage of them learning some polyrhythms, even in simpler pieces, I want them to understand something about the structure, as well as feeling it in body percussion, using phrases like nice cup of tea. We can use that to get it in our bodies, but I also want them to understand what's underneath that as well. And I think tied notes are the best way to do that. So let me know if you agree or disagree with me. Absolutely fine if you do. But I think this kind of an image can make everything a lot more clear, especially if they write it themselves. And if you do get a piece, if their first polyrhythm piece is something that is, does have beams, right? So if we look again at the first one in the book, which is by Amy Stevens, where we have quaver triplets or eighth triplets versus eighth notes or quavers, that can be more confusing for them to think about. So start with it as your crotchets, right? And tying them in a way that makes sense based on a common denominator, if you want to think about it fully mathematically. And then add the beams, right? So kind of double everything and then half it by adding the beams onto your eighth notes or your quavers, semi-quavers, sixteenths, whatever you're dealing with. Take it to a bigger note value first and then scale it down, because notes are relative. And this can help students, again, to get inside of what they're actually playing, to understand the logic behind it. That doesn't mean that they necessarily can perform it just because they understand it. But there are two layers to this. There's the mathematical layer where we actually have to see and understand what we're doing. And then there's the layer of being able to just instinctively play it. And I think both are important ultimately, no matter where you start with it. So, yeah, I've just shown you a couple of little things from the book, right? We have 8 beautiful pieces in here by 4 fantastic composers. And if you haven't come across concept collections before, I organize the pieces roughly from beginner to intermediate level. All the pieces are beginner to intermediate level because I think that's where a lot of these things are lacking. So the idea of the concept collection books is that each book covers a specific concept, right? Who would have thunk it? So each book covers a specific concept. In this case, it's polyrhythms. And we commission composers to compose pieces based on that concept, teaching that concept to a beginner and an intermediate student. Because it's very easy to find polyrhythm pieces, for example, for an advanced student. It would be hard, to completely ignore pieces that have polyrhythms. But we need a way to introduce these things sooner, earlier in the student's journey, so that they don't become scary or difficult obstacles to overcome later on. So that's why I think these books provide that way of introducing these things. Previously, we've done enharmonics, we've done the other pedals, and we've done 6 flats. And members seem to have loved every one of those so far. So this is our current book. Now you can't get those other ones that I mentioned. These are only out for 2 months at a time. So members, now is your first big reminder to go download it from the library. So it's in the printable library. Just go there, download it, save it somewhere incredibly safe on your computer or in whatever backup system you use so that you can have it forever. We won't be able to send it to you or anything like that after it expires. So it has to be downloaded during this 2-month period. Same with the hard copies. You can only buy these during this 2-month period. So now is the time to do it. Go to the Colourful Keys store and you'll find them there. While we're talking about concept collections though, I want to give you a little preview of the ones that are coming up next year, because I already have them planned out for next year. I want to let you know some of what's coming up. Just to give you a little behind the scenes sneak peek. So in February, our 2 month of February and March, the one we have coming out is called Unposition. That might sound like a mysterious title, but once I explain, you'll get it. Unposition is going to be pieces that help students who have gotten this position-based playing in their head. So maybe they did a method book that focused on positions, or maybe they just in some other way picked up this idea that they're kind of stuck in this 5-finger spot or that one, or just they're stuck to the keys. No matter where they are, they don't mind where it is, but they stick one finger on every key and they think that's how they're supposed to play all the time. Well, this book is going to have pieces, fabulous pieces, by composers with their ideas about how to break students out of position-based playing. Okay, so that's our first one. That'll be number 5, coming out in February. And then the one after that is octaves. That kind of explains itself, working on students playing octaves. Now, they don't need to be able to reach an octave necessarily, because a lot of them will be octave jumps and that kind of thing. Then number 7, which is coming out in August next year, is going to be Mixolydian. So we're going to have a whole book of Mixolydian pieces, something we don't get to encounter a ton. And the last one for next year, number 8 for us, which will come out next October, yeah, exactly a year away, is about rotation. So teaching the technique of rotation, pieces that help you to have your students encounter that. So I hope you're excited about some of those. Let me know which one you're most excited about. If you have any questions, now is the time to add them into the chat so that I can answer them. They can be about anything. It doesn't have to be about polyrhythms, but it can be. It can also be about literally anything. So add those in now if you have them. Okay, so just going back through the chat, making sure I didn't miss anything. Yes, I mean, I love doing it. It's actually such a pleasure to put them together and to work with these different composers and hopefully allow you to meet some different composers as well. Like, yes, it gives you fabulous teaching material for these specific concepts, but maybe you also get to meet some composers through these editions that you didn't know about. And they're all independent composers, usually who publish their own music or publish with smaller kind of independent publishing houses. So get you an opportunity to meet them. Rotation and unposition are the most exciting to Julie. Love that. Octaves and rotation for Teresa. Fantastic. Thank you. That's so sweet. Mixolydian is spicy. I agree, Kai. That's fantastic. Okay, if anyone has any questions, add them in now. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Because we're going to wrap up in a few minutes here. I wanted to remind you quickly about our challenge, if you didn't hear me mention that at the start. So the challenge is starting next week because a lot of people are under time pressure with this, which is why it's so soon. So it's going to be called the Assignment Sprint, and it means that you're going to put together this saved library or saved bank of assignment notes that you can call upon later and helps save you a whole bunch of time. So that is starting next week. You can go to vibrantmusicteaching.com/sprint to access that. And I hope you'll join me. It's going to be a fun community experience. We'll have a pop-up Facebook group and everything. And yeah. Okay. I'm going to give you the link directly to our concept collection. Some members are saying they need the link to that. Okay. This link isn't working yet for some reason, mysteriously. So I'm just going to pop that in the chat. Guys, if you open that up and then just refresh it in a few minutes, I'll have that fixed for you so you can get directly to that concept collection in case you can't find it. So yeah, won't work immediately, but after this broadcast, I'll fix that for you. Okay, doesn't look like I've got any random questions today. So thank you all so much for joining me. Don't forget that if you were using Tonara, you can use our import tool to bring those assignments straight into Vivid by magic, and you can do that for free. So if you just need more time to set up have your data from Tonara somewhere that you know it's safe, you can go ahead and do that. Just set up a free Vivid Practice account at vividpractice.com. Check the video here on YouTube to learn more about the Tonara assignment feature, where we port the assignments over. And if you have any follow-up questions about polyrhythms, I'd love to hear those too. So just feel free to add them into the comments. I'll see you back here next week.